It is another interesting edition of the Market Review where we discuss key developments in the financial and capital market as it affects the economy. This edition will be focusing on lifting millions of Nigerians from poverty, the role of the capital market. And my guest is Mr. Johnson Chukwu, a financial analyst and group managing director, Cowry Asset Management. It's nice to have you on the program once again, Mr. Johnson Chukwu.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Before we begin the conversation, let's give you a wrap of some stories from last week. The FMDQ Exchange announced the approval for the quotation of VFD Group PLC 4.21 billion naira series on commercial paper under its 20 billion naira commercial paper issuance program on its platform. Also last week, from the FTX Exchange, Mr. David Ibidakwo, head data and research, said Nigeria's most consumed grains are currently faced with declining food balance sheets as consumption levels rise faster than production levels. He made this point at the 2022 unveiling of the crop production report in Nigeria. Those are some of the key stories from last week. If you're joining us, it's a market review and a conversation is lifting millions of Nigerians from poverty, the role of the capital market. My guest, Mr. Johnson Chukwu, financial analyst and group managing director of Cowry Asset Management. Let's first begin, Mr. Johnson Chukwu, with the report that came out last week from the NBS on Nigeria's poverty index, showing that 133 million citizens, or 60% of the population, are in the poverty bracket. That is really a very worrisome statistics. How can we leverage the capital market to reverse this trend?
Once again, thank you for having me. You know, the capital market is basically a market for assessing long-term funding for productive activities. Productive activities in this instance include government productive activities, public sector productive activities like infrastructure, as well as manufacturing sector investments. So the capital market would be very handy in helping the government raise long-term funds to intervene in some of the critical sectors of the economy. Such sectors that we are highlighted in that multidimensional poverty index report includes access to education, access to healthcare, and as it stands today, the government does not have the economic and financial resources to invest in some of these sectors and bridge that gap that we have between supply and demand for some of this critical social and social infrastructure. So the capital market can come handy. We've seen situations in the past where the government came to the capital market and raised funds for infrastructure development. Similar ventures, similar initiatives can also be taken to raise long-term funding for some of these critical sectors, to intervene in the healthcare sector, to intervene in the education sector. And that way we will bridge this level of poverty that is currently endemic in the country.
So long-term funds, looking at issues like health bonds, maybe social bonds that cover health and education are very important. And like you said, infrastructure, which ties to the economy. Now let's look at the big one this week. The Central Bank of Nigeria's Last MPC meeting for the year 2022 is ongoing already, and the big decisions are expected. How will you assess monetary policy environment so far this year amidst the challenges of rising inflation, exchange rate challenges, and of course, recently, the redesigning of the Naira? I know you talked recently on the national TV around this development. Should we expect another hike in this MPC, and how should monetary policy be tailored to also address this scourge of poverty?
My take is that the Monetary Policy Committee will now need to hold back further adjustment to the monetary policy rates, including the monetary policy MPR, the cash reserve ratio, and the liquidity ratio. As it stands today, the Monetary Policy Committee must balance between the need to rein in on inflation and to, as well as forestall a possible reversal of economic growth. We've seen 400 basis point increase in monetary policy rate in the current year. And despite that increment, we've seen a consistent increase in inflation rate from 17.7%, which is what it was in May when the Monetary Policy Committee first raised monetary policy rate by 150 basis points to the current 21.09%. What this implies that the current contractionary monetary policies have not served to moderate inflation. So because inflation is not driven by credit expansion, inflation is driven by supply shortfalls. So we cannot continue to increase interest rate, because if we continue, we're going to tip the economy back possibly to a recession, at the minimum to a slower economic growth rate.
So definitely, all eyes will be on the central bank governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, CON, as he takes the decision from the meeting on what will happen on monetary policy rate environment. And of course, it's very key to see what happens. This is also a massive week, Mr. Johnson. We don't always have this kind of scenarios where in the same week, the CBN will hold their MPC meeting, and of course, the Securities Exchange Commission will hold the Capital Market Committee meeting, which of course they do anchor. What are your expectations? A lot has happened in the market this year, from of course, unclaimed dividends down to deepening the markets, addressing all the issues that need to encourage more investors participating in the markets.
I think what the CMC will focus on is continuous initiative to deepen the market, as well as build additional control measures to forestall market abuses. We've seen market abuses in other countries, other jurisdictions. Nigerian CMC must also take proactive measures to avoid a contagious effect or a possible replication of what has happened in the US. We have seen the cryptocurrency that has exploded, and we know that Nigeria have invested in the cryptocurrency. Of course, the SEC has already come up with several initiatives to make sure that take the appropriate decisions or policy. So I think the emphasis now should be, one, to build additional control measures to further safeguard the Nigerian capital market, as well as continue current drive to deepen the market by attracting sectors of the economy that are prominent in terms of share of productive activity, but are very light in terms of market capitalization or market activities, such as the agriculture sector. We successfully attracted the telecommunication sector. So we need to further attract the oil and gas sector and the agriculture sector to make the capital market representative of the Nigerian larger economy.
Very true. And just like you rightly said, Mr. Johnson Chukwu, when you look at a ProShare CEO Remuneration Report, it showed that the top earning CEOs impacting the market too, and shareholders were from telcos like MTN and Airtel. So that's true. So you need to see more spread, like you rightly said. You've always been advocating this across other sectors. But you just mentioned of what is happening in the US, the FTX crisis, the contagion. What are the lessons for investors across the world? Because we know that when things like this happen, it keys into a potential global crisis. Remember the Madoff scenario and what happened in 2008, 2009, and how it spread across the globe.
Well, I think for me, it means that the capital market, the Securities and Exchange Commission globally in different countries have to find ways of bringing into their jurisdiction the regulation of the cryptocurrencies. Because we know now that it's a failure of cryptocurrency firm or investment can actually snowball into a global financial crisis or national financial crisis. So we can no longer say we must cut them all the slacks because they are innovative and ingenious. We must also understand their innovativeness and find a way of building regulation around those innovations, so as to make sure that we have fit and proper promoters in the cryptocurrency sector, as well as ensure that investors' investment are safeguarded and protected.
That's very important. Mr. Johnson, let me put you on the lighter note. We're in the World Cup season. It kicked off on Sunday. Qatar spent over $200 billion. I know you always mention the fact that if Nigeria really leveraged its crude oil resources and gas, we should have been at par with such country. But again, as we wrap up, let's look at sports. There's a 4-year plan by the NFF. And of course, I know this is off the curve. I know that I'm taking you unawares on this. But what do you think the market can do? We've seen the NSD try to work with the Nigerian Football Federation, the Nigerian Football League to, of course, create products and opportunities to deepen the market and encourage football administrators and sports ecosystem to leverage the market. Is there any opportunity in the years to come, like 2-3 years, to leverage the market to deepen sports and investment in that space?
Yes, Ottoabasi, we in the capital market had actually started an initiative to have some of the big Nigerian football teams get listed, come to the capital market and raise funding and have be publicly quoted, so as to create an ecosystem that will ensure that the Nigerian football enterprise becomes a business enterprise like you have in other countries. And that is the only way you can, because once you bring investment to that segment of the social engagement, you are likely going to have it expand and become enterprises. And that's the only way we can make Nigerian football competitive. That's the only way we can invest enough resources to attract some of the big league players. And it's only when we develop the Nigerian football that we should be talking of actively participating in the World Cup and possibly hosting the World Cup in the near future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson Chukwu, even taking us to the sports level and how we can improve, because the market can also do, like you said, in US, UK, we've seen what has happened, leverage the market to deepen sports and even the creative industry. Thank you once again for this time, Mr. Johnson Chukwu. Indeed, the market provides an opportunity for wealth creation and addressing the scourge of poverty, because we must find ways to address this so that we can achieve inclusive growth and shared prosperity. Thank you, Mr. Johnson Chukwu, Group Managing Director of Cowry Asset Management and the Financial Analyst, for the time conversing on the Market Review Show.
My pleasure.
And that'll be all for this edition of the Market Review. If you have questions or suggestions on our conversation today, please send an email to Abasiekong@proshare.co. Also, you can join our website, www.proshare.co, to read our latest news articles, stories, and reports on the capital markets. You can engage us via social media platforms displayed on the screen. Just to inform our viewers to brace up for the launch of the 8th Online Trading Ranking Report later this month. You can engage us via our platforms to get further updates on this. Don't forget that you need to be informed to make the right investment decisions. Thank you for watching, and keep discussing the financial and capital market, because it creates wealth and economic opportunities.